Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being the show, we're talking about TV shows that are dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of The English, a great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So based on the opening, I guess, just kind of that cold opening where we're kind of like, wasn't it like 10 years in the future or something like, no, was it 10 or was it like 13 or something? It's like over a decade plus, like in the future. And then we're kind of rewinding to this story of how Cornelia meets Eli. And she's kind of telling it from the perspective, and I don't know whether it's a situation of he didn't make it. So I guess that kind of tells you that, or maybe it's just simply like, hey, we both made it, but we went our separate ways. Like I went back to England and you stayed and try to find things. I don't know. I mean, it's probably going to be like a sad ending regardless, but we'll have to wait and see. That's just me making pure conjecture, having only seen, the first episode at the time of recording this. So, it was kind of interesting kind of seeing Eli's circumstances of, he is of the, oh God, what was it? He's of the Pawnee tribe, but he's working with the U.S. Army, like the army that's also hunting down people. And I think it's an interesting conversation he comes from later on when he was like, no, like there's bad blood between different tribes before, like you just became another enemy on the totem pole, but like we already had other people we were already beefing with. So it's not like you're just one more enemy to add to the board essentially. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing. I don't think that's something that ever really gets, it's a conversation I know some people kind of throw out there when it comes to like, oh yeah, like people coming over and discovering a land that was already, preoccupied with other people. But it's just like, I don't think I've ever really learned that in history that there were like, and I guess it's no different from any other place. Like, yeah, there's people, that I'm sure back at home, in England, there were people beefing about stuff too. So like, why would, what would eventually become the U.S. be any different? Because obviously we're still in that early days of territories getting like figured out, because this one was in like the new territory of Oklahoma, where they end up killing a guy named Running Hulk because he killed someone they knew Lonnie a long time ago. Like he was kind of like a big time and I guess either they caught him off guard or just finally caught up to him, because they were saying like he was a big thing in like 66. So maybe he just gotten older and slower, and that's just what it is on the battlefield. The moment you get older and slower, that's when they're able to kind of catch up to you. But they didn't just stop with like the headshot. Like the other guy came over and emptied his like revolver into him. I was like unnecessary, but I guess it was like to make sure he's dead and just to kind of make a point. And they were going to kill like maybe like, it's like, right, we were supposed to, they were supposed to do something, and it was like, well, we have plenty other targets. And one of the other soldiers was like, no, we were meant to take like any survivors back. The guy, I guess, like do whatever with. And Eli shows up to be like, no. And because he is a commanding officer, they had to listen to him because it's like his last day and everything too. And one of the ladies spits at him. I was like wondering why she looked so familiar. It's the actress who plays Para in La Brea, if you've seen La Brea. So she spits and basically talks about him being one of them. And it's like, that's the really interesting thing about the fact is that he is working with the army. It's like he is betraying not like his people as a whole, just not the Pawnee, like anyone else. Because I don't know if they were necessarily Pawnee. Maybe they were. But he's helped hunt down other people, and it's like, these are your people you're helping too. And it's just like, maybe for him, it's just like, it's just purely about survival. Like he talks about it later, he has nothing left. He has no family left. So for him, it's just like, yeah, I'm doing whatever I can to survive. Whether he purposely signed up, whether he got recruited into it, this is who he is and what he represents. And I love that guy later on being like, right, here inside the army, you're one of us. Out there, you're one of them. It's like, I mean, that's, to everyone else on the outside, he's one of them, but to every other tribe, he's not. He's a traitor. He's one of them. It's like you're trapped in this in between where no one you're accepted. Anyone that's white will see you as one of them. Any one of your own people will see you as one of the white people. So it's just like the colonized. So there's no winning. There's no place for you to make your own. And he says like, right, because of his service, he's entitled to a piece of land. But even the guy's like, do you actually think they'll actually give it to you? He's like, I'm gonna it's in the article of you know, the laws and stuff that because of my service, I have claim to a certain amount of land. So he's planning on going north. And the guy was like, if you stop by Wyoming, let maybe his family or somebody know that we finally got the guy that killed Lonnie. So he's on his way. And then like a week later, he ends up getting captured. And that's when him and Cornelia like first crossed paths. And I guess like she wanted to spare him just because it's like, oh, like here, I'll pay you this amount to let him go, cut him down. And it's like, oh, what did he do? It's like, oh, ma'am, don't get it twisted. He didn't do anything. Like, oh, he was very like, he had his manners and everything. He's hanging over there, the ever living shit beat out of him. Oh, just because of the color of his skin. I was like, wow. I mean, why? I mean, at this point in time in history, why deny it? It's like, yeah. He's, you know, he deserves it because of the color of his skin. Like, we all know that. So, but she wanted to help him. And it's like, so it ends up being this situation of even Eli was like, do not pick this fight. This is not your fight. Walk away. And he ends up, the guy Richard ends up sucker punching her, knocking her out and finding out she has like a shit ton of money on her. So I was like, right. I didn't know I mean, I guess ultimately they let Eli go because the point was to, when they ultimately end up killing her, it was to put it all on Eli. So I even love that line from, Toby Jones' character later on. He's like, well, I didn't know you then like I know you now. I was almost hoping they'd keep him around because he did the whole thing of like, yeah, I'm kind of an inventor. And basically he has all these like guns, like in the carriage of it. So like when people roll up and he's like, right, are they Indians or what? And it's like, cause even he's like, right, because they'll just as much kill me potentially as they'll kill you, because it turns out they're not. I should also point out, I kept wondering why I recognize the actor who plays, I'm going to probably butcher his name, about Eli. It's, I'm gonna say Chase, is his name? God, I'm blanking on his last name now, but I want to say his first name's like Chase. Chase, Spencer, once again, I'm probably butchering his first name, but I kept being like, why do I recognize him? I'm looking through his IMDb, it was like, oh, he was in Banshee, and I was like, who is, because I just saw it on the, like, you know, Fire Stick, like, IMDb, the X-ray thing, and I'm like, who are you in Banshee? And I was like, maybe, because I think, what's his character's name? Raven? I think he was one of the new deputies in season 3 of Banshee. I don't remember if he was in season 4 or not. I think he made a small appearance in season 4, but I don't think he was really in season 4. I think he was mainly in season 3, and he had like a few appearances in season 4. But I think, yeah, I feel like I vaguely remember him. I'm not well versed in the Twilight movies, so I didn't know him from the Twilight movies. Either way, putting all that aside, either way, they let Eli go, and it's like, cool, we're keeping your bag, and we're keeping your horse, and you get this carriage ride to Ellsworth, because they were going to turn him in. It was kind of the whole point, to get the reward. But it's like, yeah, these guys roll up on us, and it's like, cool, give them in. It's like, right, the best reward you can get is a dead Indian. That's all we can offer you. He's like, nah, I was hoping to get a reward for this. So it's like, oh, then why'd you give him a gun? It's like, well, you know, the enemy of my enemy, and I just don't know how this is all going to play out. I didn't know who you were before you rolled up. So, but it turns into a gunfight. Eli puts them down in conjunction, because like Toby Jones' character is like, yeah, I haven't tested out this situation. Like, I'm a bit of a inventor myself, and he's like, I never tested this out. And obviously he walks away with a gunshot wound, and it's going to be the end of him. But he was like, yeah, it's kind of funny. There's a particular name that came to his mind. Like, he's like, right there at the end, he's like, I don't know why that name kind of stuck. Eli gave him the gun, and he was like, yeah, no point in kind of worrying about that here at the end. And he kills himself rather than have the slow, painful death. It's like, no, I'm going to end it quick. So I was like, oh. I mean, well, you know, because even he was like, yeah, you were going to sell me out, and you were going to make it so you were going to blame that English woman's death on me. And I'm like, yeah. So, but it turns out Richard orchestrated a lot of this, because he knows who Cornelia is, even the man that she's hunting, the man that's responsible for her son's death. She's because I'm wondering what it's going to be. Because at first I was wondering, like, is it going to be like a stranger, like, or is it going to be someone she knows, or was it going to be like her husband or something? But she says she's never been married. Well, because I feel like that's a pretty big deal, because she had a son. I'm like, having a child out of wedlock is a big no-no. So, like, the fact is that happened, I thought was kind of, that the fact is they made note of that was kind of like, oh, that's interesting. I feel like that's kind of, like I said, considering the times, like having a baby out of wedlock is a big, big major no-no. And I'm surprised our family kind of let that slide. You know, it's like I said, she's never been married, so it still could be the baby daddy's situation if he did that, but I'm assuming not unless he owned something and he didn't want to have to end up legally sharing it because his child would be an heir or something. There's so much we don't know about why her son had to die, but I do think it's such an interesting thing when she's Cornelia's there, like he makes her get in this particular dress and she's shedding tears. She's like, oh, I'm sorry. And then like partway through the conversation, like those tears kind of dry up and it's just kind of like, I feel like she was kind of, and maybe this, my misinterpreting it, I felt like she was kind of leaning into like the whole, oh, I'm a damsel in distress, please, I'm fragile. And then just like, right, when he wasn't kind of buying it, when he was making the decision that like, right, I work for that man and I hate him too. The fact of the matter is I'm kind of like on that ledger of his as well, that we kind of all owe him something in some way or form, whether it's gains or losses, we all exist somewhere on that ledger. So for him, it's like, right, I'm going to get my little slice of the pie. He's like, even if I have to basically go for scraps, the metaphor he uses is basically spitting in the soup. I guess she's the metaphorical soup in this regard of like, right, cause it's like, right, we knew about you. You shouldn't have never gone to Southampton. And she was like, that was so close. He was like, something else was always like the better choice. It's like, we've known about you skipping over St. Louis, your time in New Orleans. And she's like, and it's like, in fact, we met because you were running around with a bag full of cash unbanked. So like, you were always going to draw the wrong attention. It's like, then why let me get all the way here if you knew I was coming? It's like, oh, because he wanted your destination to get end here. I think the point is probably to make her feel like she's on her way towards revenge, feeling like she's getting closer and closer. And just as she's feeling like she's making progress, and feel like she's closing in, as she's getting like feeling herself thinking like, yes, I'm going to get my revenge, to take it all away from her. I think that's the kind of point to break her spirit in the end. I think is kind of the point. But yeah, like the metaphor about spitting in the soup and stuff is like, yeah, he was gonna, she was like, right, you're gonna rape me. And he was like, yeah, his lanes of like consent or something like that. He's very loose with the lanes of consent or something like that. And she's like, well, then go fuck a horse. And he was like, oh, maybe, and even later on saying like, oh, maybe cause she's like, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna kill you. May not be now, maybe not be tomorrow, but like, I will kill you at some point in time. And he's like, oh, then maybe, you have to come back from the dead to do it. And she's like, I will. He's like, oh, then maybe you can come back as a horse. So, but it is interesting, like, right, that this is what this is all about. But before he could do anything, because he's like, oh, you're not the woman I expected. She's like, you're exactly the man I expected. Eli shows up and kills a bastard, slices his throat right in front of her, and it's just kind of like, be quiet. And he goes out there, tells the accordion guy, keep playing. If you try to run, I will track you down. And we never found out what happened to accordion guy. The last time we saw him in the episode, he's like, can I stop now? Eli was like, no. He's like, my fingers are getting all bubbly. So the last dude, Eli's trying to find his bag and strings him up. And, it's like, right, basically it's kind of on a waterboard him, essentially. And it's like, or more so waterboard / drown. But yeah, it's going to drown him. And it's like, right, give me my bag. And inside his bag was his medicine. Because I think the medicine protects you. My understanding of medicine, I think it's supposed to be, it kind of wards off all evil. It's supposed to be like, I think it's almost like the spirits of your ancestors, or like the spirits and stuff are kind of looking out for you. Because even Cornelia was like, no, I have some too, like magic. She's like, oh, no, I don't mean anything by it. She's like, I have my own. It's her son's hair in her locket. And he was like, powerful. And she's like, I know. So they kind of have that commonality. But even like Eli was going to just leave the guy hanging and being like, yeah, it's up to that horse. Hopefully you've been treating that horse right and kept him like his thirst nice and quenched. Well, it's actually Cornelia who backs the horse up and makes the guy drown, but she kind of looks away because like this isn't something she's used to. Like, yeah, she's on her path of revenge, but I don't think she's really gotten her hands dirty much, and this is probably the first like steps towards that. So she wants Eli to, it's like, right, she's like, I'm gonna go this particular place, and Eli's like, because I love, he was like, she's like, where are you going? He's like, I'm going north. Do you want to know where I'm going? He's like, no. She's like, I'm going west. It's like, no, you're going to know where I'm going. And she's like, I'm going to Wyoming. He's like, that's north. And she's like, oh. I also love the whole thing of like this place, this country can't be filled with murderers and thieves. I'm like, oh, once again, quote unquote, considering the times, it kind of is, sorry if I'm besmirching history in that regard, but it's mainly run by like, because I say that because like, right, it's, whole bunch of people coming in to take some territory that ain't theirs and make it into theirs, So that's why I mean mainly on that regard. Hell, I even love that conversation from Eli being like, yes, I've lost everything. I have no family, no mother, I've lost a mother, father, no, I lost a wife, sons, daughters. I have no family. He's like, I've been to hell and I've caused hell. He's even saying like, when it comes to, cause she's later on like, oh, this country isn't just filled with murderers and thieves. There's people like you in it. And he's like, yeah, but I've been both. He's like, I most likely will continue to be both in the future, like both a murderer and a thief. Once again, doing whatever you can to survive because it is a literal, well, not the literal Wild Wild West, but in that same ilk and vein. I mean, and its antithesis of just kind of the Wild West that it is, But she pleaded for him to help her because like he's like, how many killings have you seen in the time you've been here? And she's like 4. And he's like 4 in 2 weeks. Obviously I interpret that as like wow, how have you managed to only see 4 in 2 weeks? It's like that. There's probably like people would see 4 a day maybe type of situation because their next journey of where they're going to Wyoming would be like a month's journey. And it's like, and I love the title of the episode being what you want and what you need. And even him saying that what you want and what you need is the difference between what you want and what you need is how much you can carry on the back of a horse. But I love that kind of, I think that statement is going to be the antithesis for this journey. What you want and what you need, that difference being for them, it's like, it's going to be a lesson that both of them are going to learn over the course of this. And she has hindsight now to kind of have that perspective on things and, in the future to look back on, and it's like at that time, neither one of them knew that lesson yet, but eventually they will learn that lesson. So, but obviously she's Lady Cornelia Locke. It's because of, because being her father's daughter, because of being a daughter, she once again, not married. She was even saying, what was it? She was saying that she was like, oh, I'm a Scorpio. And he was like, what? She's like, yeah, it's a rage back in, England. I'll tell you about it sometime. She's like, my whole thing is about revenge. And she's like, I get the feeling yours is too. So I thought that was interesting. And obviously, it's like, right, she can shoot if she needs to, killing a pig, and I guess keeping them have some resources as they make their journey. So I think this was just kind of a great way to start off this, the story about revenge. I kind of went into this knowing that was what that was, but I have no idea, obviously, because obviously the trailer doesn't really tell you too much. I mean, it gives you some highlights of like some of the situations they find themselves in. But it is interesting, and what made her decide, revenge is enough of a reason to make this journey on your own. And, the fact is she probably didn't know because she didn't come she came packed with a whole bunch of stuff. We have I don't know if it's a whole bunch of clothes. It's like, she came packed, I don't think it was like a full-blown arsenal of I don't think she probably had any weapons on her, but she was just keen on, I'm going to find that person who's trying to forget about my son. I'm going to remind him who they are, and it's going to be the last thing they hear before I kill them. But once again, knowing the story of why this person killed her son, what this is all about, maybe Eli finding a little bit of a kindred spirit in Cornelia. Because I even love her perspective on things. She's kind of saying it's fate that brought us here. She's like, where we started at, you were tied up, I was knocked out, and look at us now. We are we were both going to get killed. We're both alive while all the other people who wanted to kill us are dead. Tell me that doesn't mean something, that this was meant to be. We were meant to cross paths. This was meant to be. So I love that interesting perspective of being yeah, basically it's fate that this was meant to happen. So I even love that whole conversation of like, she had even asked like what his name was, and he was like, yeah, she's, and cause like for him, she's like, what do you prefer to be called by? And he was like, neither. Cause he'd even said like cause he said I said it once cause I was like, oh, it's such an interesting name. I don't remember like what his Pawnee name is, but his, name after getting baptized is Eli, Whip. And he's like, you know why they call me that? It's because I've always been really good with rope. Yeah, so, because I think Toby Jones' character made a reference of like, oh, you kind of like, who was it? It might have even been Richard. It might not even been Toby Jones' character. It might have been Richard. Which, side note, God, what's that actor's name? It's like Ciaran. I'm probably butchering it. I believe he's an Irish actor. Maybe Ciaran or Kieran Hines. I'm butchering that. Did not know he was Steppenwolf. I'm assuming both versions. I specifically saw the Justice Snyder cut, but maybe in both versions of it he was no, because I think it was a different actor, wasn't it? In the Joss Whedon version. It doesn't matter. I just know that definitely in the Snyder cut at the very least he was Steppenwolf. So I just thought that was interesting. I also didn't talk about it, but it's like, yeah, I keep saying Toby Jones, but Toby Jones, you know? And also, like, I don't have to say it. Emily Blunt, you know? I was like, that's made me go like, oh, that's wow. Because I'm like, I don't know if I've ever seen her in a TV show before. She might have done TV before, like maybe in the UK that I'm not aware of. I don't know if there's any... Because obviously this show airs, like, in the UK, like, aired like a day before it premiered on Prime Video here in the US. But I'm like, I don't know how many TV shows I've ever seen her in. I know she's probably done some, and I just can't think of any off the top of my head. It's kind of beside the point, but it's just kind of like, holy crap, Emily Blunt. What's also funny, too, when you actually think about it, because, like, well, John's got season 3 of Jack Ryan coming out next month, so it's kind of funny. Thinking too much about it, it's a big platform, so of course they want to potentially have projects up here at the same time. Once again, it's funny. Either way, I'm at this point, I'm just rambling, but like I said, I'm excited to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.